My family called me selfish when I refused to babysit. But when my sister's husband found out everything, it changed everything. Hey there. Welcome to today's story. What are you up to right now? Whatever it is, I hope you're ready to dive into this story. Today, we're going to follow a character who is facing a huge challenge. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a tough decision? Stand up for yourself or set boundaries with your family? It's not easy, right? Well, stick around and see how the character navigates through it all. I promise it'll be worth it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it, and it keeps me motivated to bring you more exciting stories. Thank you so much for being here. I used to be that person in the family who just existed. Not in a bad way, but in a way where I was always the one people leaned on, the one who was expected to step in when no one else could. I'm Jade, 28. A freelance graphic designer who just wanted to live her life. But it wasn't that simple. I have an older sister, Lana. She's 5 years older than me, married with 3 kids. And while Lana's life was filled with the chaos of raising triplets, I was the quiet, reliable one. The aunt who was always available for babysitting, for cleaning, for organizing. You name it, Lana had this magical ability to make the world revolve around her. And for some strange reason, my parents thought it was perfectly fine. No one ever asked me what I wanted to do. My life, my time, my energy. Everything was up for grabs. I loved my nephews, trust me, I did. But when you're constantly the backup plan, it starts to feel less like love and more like an obligation. The tipping point came last summer. Our family was planning its annual vacation, an event I dreaded with every fiber of my being. It was supposed to be a time to reconnect, unwind, and enjoy some time at the beach. I'd taken time off work, booked my bus ticket, and I was genuinely excited. I even had plans to check out some local art exhibitions I'd missed for years. But the reality? I found myself sharing a tiny room with my 3 young nephews, while Lana and her husband Adam were living it up in a luxury suite with a beach view. The first night, one of the kids cried over a misplaced teddy bear. Another couldn't find the TV remote, and the third kept asking for snacks at midnight. I barely slept, but the worst part? I didn't dare say anything. My mom, Linda, had already handed me the key with a smile. They love you, Jade. They won't be any trouble. I should have known better. The next morning, I hoped for a moment of peace, maybe just an hour to visit the local art gallery. But Lana texted me right as I was about to leave. Where are you going? Adam's about to leave. Can you watch the kids for a bit? And just like that, my plans went out the window. Just a bit turned into 3 hours. And when I tried to talk to Mom about it, she said, "Sweetie, you're here for free. It's only fair you help out a little." Something inside me snapped. I wasn't free. I worked hard for what I had. And I was sick of being treated like the unpaid babysitter. That trip was the last straw. I knew it. I had to do something. I could feel the tension bubbling inside me, the frustration of being the go-to person whenever my family needed something, and the growing sense of resentment that I had tried so hard to ignore for years. It wasn't just about the vacation, it was about my life. My identity had been swallowed whole by my family's expectations, and I had been living my life on autopilot, trying to please everyone around me. It wasn't fair. I had spent years silently bearing the weight of my family's demands, telling myself that it was just temporary, that this was what I was supposed to do. But this time I knew I had to take control. I had to find the courage to make a decision that would not only change the course of this trip, but also change the way I allowed myself to be treated. I took a deep breath and walked into the living room, where Lana was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone, the kids playing in the background. She didn't look up when I approached her, and for a second, I almost turned around. Maybe I could just leave things as they were. Maybe I could just accept my fate and go along with what everyone expected of me. But no, I couldn't do that anymore. I stood there, still as a statue, gathering the words that had been swirling in my mind for weeks. Finally, I spoke up. "Lana, I need to talk to you," I said, my voice steady but firm. I wasn't sure what I was going to say at first, but as the words came out, I realized just how long I had been holding back. "I'm not going on the trip this year unless I have my own space. The room felt suddenly smaller. Lana looked up at me, surprised, and then confused, as if she didn't understand what I meant. What do you mean, your own space? We're all supposed to be together. I mean, I'm not sharing a room with the kids again, I continued, taking a step closer. I need my own room. I need some time to myself. It's not just about the trip. It's about my life. I've been sacrificing my peace for years to make this work for everyone else. And I'm done. I'm booking my own room. For a moment, there was silence. The sound of the kids' laughter faded into the background. Lana's face was a mix of confusion and irritation. Are you serious? She asked, her voice rising slightly. You're really going to do this? It's a family vacation, Jade. Everyone's looking forward to it. And now you're saying you won't come because you want your own space. I didn't back down. Yes, I'm serious. I'm not going to be your unpaid nanny this time, Lana. I'm not going to let you or anyone else dictate how my time is spent, especially when it feels like I'm always the one doing the heavy lifting. I need a break too. Lana's face flushed with frustration, and her voice grew sharper. You're being selfish, Jade. You don't understand what it's like to juggle 3 kids, to run everything on my own. I'm doing the best I can, and you're just going to bail on me like this? How is that fair? I could feel the guilt creeping in, but I shut it out. This wasn't about fairness anymore. It was about my well-being. I do understand, I said quietly, but with conviction. I know you're overwhelmed, but I'm not the one who has kids. I don't have that responsibility, and I don't have to sacrifice my own happiness and sanity just to make sure everyone else is comfortable. I could see the anger flash across her face, but I didn't flinch. It was the first time in years that I had stood up for myself, and it felt like I was finally breaking free from the invisible chains that had bound me to this role. Lana didn't respond right away. Instead, she turned back to the kids, her lips pressed together in a thin line. I could feel the tension hanging in the air, but I stood my ground. I wasn't going to apologize for wanting something for myself. I wasn't going to apologize for needing to live my own life outside the suffocating expectations of my family. But of course, the fallout didn't stop there. When I mentioned my decision to my mom later that evening, I could see the disappointment in her eyes. Jade, I don't understand, she said, her voice filled with confusion and a hint of hurt. We're a family. You're supposed to want to be with us. What's this about needing your own space? You've been fine with it before. I tried to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the weight of her words pressing down on me. I've been fine with it because I didn't know how to say no. But this time I need to set a boundary. I need a break, Mom. I need to stop putting everyone else's needs ahead of my own. Mom sighed, shaking her head. I don't want you to feel like you're abandoning us. You're all we have, Jade. I just don't understand why this is such a big deal. I took a deep breath. It's a big deal because it's my life, Mom. It's not just about a vacation. It's about finally taking control of my own happiness. If I don't do this now, I'll keep falling into the same cycle of pleasing everyone else and forgetting about myself. The conversation ended there, but I could feel the weight of the family's expectations pressing down on me. Mom wasn't happy, Lana wasn't happy, and it seemed like no one understood. But deep down, I knew I couldn't keep living this way. I wasn't going to let my life slip away just to make everyone else happy. I wasn't the one with kids. I wasn't the one who needed to be on 24/7 duty. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about a vacation. This was about me finally standing up for myself. After I told my family I wasn't going to babysit this time, the backlash was immediate. Lana's response came through first. A message so long it could have been a letter. Each word seemed to burn with hurt, anger, and frustration. She said I was selfish, that I was abandoning my family, that I didn't understand how hard it was for her to juggle everything. I was wrong, she said. I was so wrong for thinking that I was somehow entitled to a break when everyone else had it worse. And that just stung. It stung because part of me had believed those things too, for so long. I'd convinced myself that I was being ungrateful, that I should be okay with playing the role of the aunt who always steps in when needed, the one who gives up her personal life without ever asking for something in return. But when I read her message, All of the years of sacrificing myself for the sake of family hit me like a wave. This wasn't just about a vacation or watching the kids. It wasn't about anything as small as that. It was about years of being pushed aside, ignored, and expected to put my life on hold. My boundaries had been trampled, and I had allowed it. I had let it happen over and over again. I wasn't the one with kids. I wasn't the one who had to manage a house and 3 small children. I wasn't the one who asked to live a life where every weekend, every holiday, and every free moment had to be sacrificed for someone else's convenience. So I didn't reply right away. I needed time. Time to process, time to breathe, time to gather my thoughts. But deep down, I knew what I had to do. I was done being silent. I was done pretending. I was done being the one who kept quiet just to keep the peace. After a long night of thinking it over, I did something I never thought I'd do. I posted my side of the story online. On Reddit. I knew it was risky. I knew it could blow up in my face. I wasn't looking for pity, but I wanted people to hear what I had been through. I needed to know if anyone else felt the same way. If anyone else had been trapped in the same cycle of sacrifice, silence, and self-neglect. I wrote a post that felt like it was coming from the deepest part of me. I shared how every family event had become about everyone but me. How I'd been the aunt who was always expected to be okay with never having time for myself. I wrote about how I'd given up weekends to babysit, holidays to help with chores, and vacation days just to make sure everyone else could enjoy their time off. I described the resentment I'd built up, the frustration of being expected to just show up without any regard for my needs or desires. I wrote, "Am I wrong for wanting to have my own space?" I hit the post button and immediately felt a wave of relief. I said it. I had finally said it out loud. But even as I felt the weight lifting from my shoulders, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling of exposure. What if my family saw it? What if they felt even worse about what I'd shared? What if they decided they didn't want me in their lives anymore? The response was overwhelming. I wasn't alone, not even close. There were hundreds of comments, people who understood exactly what I was going through. They shared their own stories of being the family member who always had to take a back seat, the one who had to give up their personal life for the sake of others. Reading through the comments was cathartic. It was the first time in a long while that I felt understood. Strangers were validating my feelings, something I had never received from my own family. It was like opening a floodgate of emotions that I hadn't even realized I was carrying. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was going crazy for wanting to live my life on my own terms. But with the overwhelming support came something else. Something I wasn't prepared for. The fallout was intense. Lana saw the post, and Mom saw it. I knew they would. They had to have. I spent the rest of the evening nervously checking my phone, my stomach a tight knot. It wasn't long before I received another message from Lana. This one wasn't long, but it was sharp and hurtful. She accused me of airing our dirty laundry. She said I'd made her look bad, that I had made her look like a horrible mom. And in some ways, I understood her frustration. I understood that she probably felt attacked. But here's the thing. I wasn't the one who made her look bad. She had done that herself year after year, by refusing to acknowledge my needs, by constantly demanding more from me without ever once considering what I might want or need. Lana's message was full of pain, but it was also full of defensiveness. She said I didn't understand how hard it was for her to manage 3 kids while trying to keep everything together. And to be honest, I did understand. I understood that being a mother was tough. But I also understood that I wasn't responsible for her exhaustion. I wasn't the one who had chosen to have 3 kids and a husband who was constantly unavailable. I wasn't the one who had asked to be in charge of everything. I didn't respond right away. I didn't want to say something out of anger. I knew that if I responded in the heat of the moment, it wouldn't end well. But eventually, I gathered myself enough to send a reply. It wasn't long, but it was firm. I've done enough, Lana, and I'm not going to keep sacrificing my happiness for the sake of your comfort. As soon as I sent that message, my heart pounded. I felt a rush of relief, but also a surge of guilt. Was I being too harsh? Should I have been more understanding? But as the seconds ticked by, I realized something important. No, I wasn't being harsh. I wasn't being selfish. I was standing up for myself for the first time in my life. I wasn't going to let anyone, no matter how much I loved them, use my time, my energy, and my mental health as a free resource anymore. The night dragged on, and I tried to distract myself. But I couldn't escape the reality of what I had done. I had opened a door, and there was no going back. I had exposed the raw truth of my feelings, and now it was out there for everyone to see. But what happened next was something I didn't expect. I thought the tension between us would only grow, that my family would resent me even more. But the next morning, something changed. I saw a message from Mom. She didn't immediately yell or criticize. She didn't accuse me of being wrong. Instead, she just asked, "Jade, why didn't you tell me this sooner?" Lana called me the next day. Her voice was tight with emotion. She accused me of airing our dirty laundry. She said I made her look bad, like she was a horrible mom. And in some ways, I understood. But here's the thing. I wasn't the one who made her look bad. She had done that herself year after year, by refusing to acknowledge my needs and constantly demanding more from me. I didn't apologize. Instead, I calmly told her, "I've done enough, Lana, and I'm not going to keep sacrificing my happiness for the sake of your comfort." That night, Mom called, and for the first time, she didn't try to guilt-trip me. Instead, she just listened. She didn't say much, but she didn't need to. I think she knew. I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was standing up for every moment I'd lost, every ounce of joy I'd given up to make others happy. A few weeks later, things started to shift. It wasn't immediate. The change didn't come in a rush of grand gestures or magical transformations. It was subtle at first, like a slow tide that gradually erodes the shore. Lana reached out to me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she was different. There was no anger in her voice, no blame, just a simple message that read, "I'm sorry." Those 3 words hit me harder than I expected. For months, I had been holding onto a quiet resentment toward her, thinking she would never understand what I had been through, let alone apologize for it. But here it was, and as much as I wanted to feel angry or dismissive, I found myself sitting there, staring at my phone, feeling the weight of her apology settle in my chest. It was strange. I had been waiting for this moment, but now that it was here, it felt surreal. Did she really mean it? Or was this just another attempt to keep the peace? I wasn't sure. But then something even more surprising happened. Lana told me she had started going to therapy. I couldn't help but feel a mixture of disbelief and relief. Therapy. Lana, my older sister who had always been the one with all the answers, had finally acknowledged that she needed help. That was a massive step, not just for her but for our relationship. It was hard to swallow the fact that for all these years, I had been silently bearing the emotional weight of our relationship. And here she was, doing the work to try to understand herself and, in turn, me. We'd spent so many years in a dysfunctional dynamic that had seemed unfixable. But now, there was a crack in that wall. Maybe we could start to rebuild. I still wasn't sure where it would lead, but I couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. A part of me was still holding my breath, waiting for her to fall back into old patterns. But another part of me, a more hopeful part, believed this time could be different. Mom and Dad, too, seemed to finally realize the extent of what I had been going through. It had taken a long time, but they were starting to listen. They didn't immediately understand, but at least they tried. It wasn't easy for them to grasp the reality of what I had been carrying for years. How I had been silently giving up my own life to please everyone else. How my needs had been overlooked. How my sense of self had been lost in the shuffle. But they were listening now. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel invisible. My voice was heard. Dad, in particular, was a quiet man, often wrapped up in his own world. He had never been one to show much emotion or get involved in the emotional dynamics of the family. But something had shifted in him, too. I couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I could sense it in the way he looked at me now, with a mixture of apology and acknowledgement. It was subtle, but it was there. It was like the air had cleared, even if only a little, and I could finally breathe without the weight of unspoken resentments hanging over me. The family vacation rolled around, and this time things were different. For the first time in years, I wasn't dreading it. I wasn't dreading the endless expectations, the hidden demands, or the feeling that I would have to spend the entire trip sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of everyone else. This time, I was going on my own terms. I had my own room. No one expected me to babysit. No one asked me to pick up the slack. It felt strange at first, almost like I was breaking some unspoken rule, but it felt right. I joined in the family activities, but this time I did it because I wanted to, not because I was expected to. I wasn't just the background character anymore. I was present, but I was also present for myself, not just for everyone else. I visited art galleries, spent hours walking along the beach, and even had moments of quiet solitude where I could sit with my thoughts and breathe without the weight of guilt hanging over me. I remember one afternoon, walking along the shore, the waves crashing gently at my feet. The sun was low in the sky, casting long shadows on the sand. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel the pressure to keep up, to play the role that had been assigned to me. I wasn't the caretaker. I wasn't the peacekeeper. I wasn't the one who was always asked to do everything for everyone else. I was just me. I was just Jade. That afternoon, I found a quiet bench overlooking the ocean and sat there for hours, just watching the water, letting the sound of the waves fill my mind. The sun began to set, and the sky turned a warm shade of orange and pink. It felt like I had finally found a piece of myself that I had lost years ago. It wasn't perfect. Of course, it wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension. There were still glimpses of the old dynamics, the old patterns trying to creep back in. But for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was more than just an afterthought. I felt like I deserved to enjoy life on my own terms, and that, in itself, was a huge victory. That vacation was different from all the others. For once, it wasn't just about making sure everyone else was happy. It wasn't just about picking up the slack. It wasn't about waiting for someone to ask if I wanted to join in or if I needed anything. For the first time, I was asking myself what I wanted. I was doing the things I loved, without feeling guilty for doing them. I was creating my own space in the world, and it felt incredible. By the time the vacation ended, things had changed. It wasn't just me who had grown. It was my family too. Lana had learned to ask for help without demanding. Mom stopped expecting me to drop everything. Dad was more supportive, and for the first time, he actually apologized for not seeing how hard it had been for me. In the weeks that followed, I got a message from Lana. It wasn't much, just a simple, "Thank you for showing me how to respect boundaries." That was all, but it was everything. And while I still had moments of doubt, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back to the old me. I wasn't the sacrificial aunt anymore. I was Jade, the woman who finally learned to put herself first. Conclusion: this story isn't just about a family vacation gone wrong. It's about reclaiming your life. It's about finding the courage to stand up for yourself, even when it means shaking things up. So, if you're in a situation where you feel like you're being taken for granted, remember, you have the right to say no. You have the right to prioritize yourself. And trust me, the people who truly care about you will understand. The rest, they'll have to adjust. So, what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. What part of the story resonated most with you? Was there a moment that made you reflect on your own experiences? Feel free to drop a comment below and share your perspective. And if you haven't already, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to stay tuned for the next chapter of this journey. Thank you so much for sticking with me through this story. I appreciate every single one of you. See you next time.